Do you remember back in 1958 a popular song by a group called Danny and the Juniors, and these lyrics? Rock and roll is here to stay. It will never die. It was meant to be that way, though I don't know why. I don't care what the people say. Rock and roll is here to stay. Well, Danny and the Juniors were right. They were prophets. Other sounds have come and gone in pop music, but rock and roll has never died. It has changed, and golden oldie names like Elvis Presley and Fats Domino, Buddy Holly, Chuck Berry are now being replaced by the likes of Debbie Harry and her group, Blondie. So far, Blondie, and that's the name of the group, is perhaps the best known group. But there are lots of others coming along in the current transformation of rock and roll. It's called New Wave Rock. And 2020's arts editor Tom Hoving has a report on who they are and what they're trying to say.
When disco fever was sweeping the country in the late 70s, a secret revolt was brewing in small music clubs, basements, and garages. Hundreds of little-known rock and roll bands with strange names rejected what most people thought were today's smash hits. These groups and their fans rebelled against big bands, big stars, big disco, and big money. Their music is called New Wave. It's supposed to be an assault, and it is. Some of it is political, some intellectual, but most of it is down-to-earth dance music. We're going to show you those components, for it may just become the hottest sound of the 1980s. The funny thing is that for inspiration, it goes back 20 years. Rock and roll has always borrowed from the past and threatened the present. In the 50s, Chuck Berry took country, western, and rhythm and blues, made a rock and roll sound so threatening, it was banned in some cities. In the second rock wave of the early 60s, the Rolling Stones went back to Berry's sounds, and they created something new and even more threatening, something sexual, anti-establishment. The robot-like group Devo, dressed in radiation suits, are new wave. They also borrow from the past, singing the Rolling Stones hit of 65. The song is old, but they shocked the establishment of 1979 by mocking life in the nuclear age. In a film used in concerts, they make fun of teenage frustrations of the 50s. They flip people out.
Well, we've seen it several times now, where you begin with a basic, raw, root sound, a basic rock and roll band of 3 or 4 pieces. And as the years progress and the music evolves, it gets more and more elaborate, up until the point where there's really no place else to go but to react, to go back to the basics again.
The 70s got more involved with glitter rock, theater, makeup, high platform heels. That in itself became so big that the groups rebelled against it and started again back to more of a simplistic rock and roll, not exactly like the 50s, but with tremendous origins in the 50s.
More than just the music of New Wave has origins in the 50s. The attitude of rock and roll started off anti-glamour, anti-star. Buddy Holly became a hero because he looked like an average teenager, just like his fans, and he sang their hopes and dreams. Translating that to new wave is Elvis Costello, a typically unglamorous new wave artist. His love song, What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding. Elvis hit a gold album in 1978, and that signaled the commercial arrival of new wave. The event was less a revolution in the music industry than a rediscovery of the rock and roll audience. The music and clothes may be 50s, but the blue hair of Levi and the Rockets is definitely new wave. In the 60s and early 70s, the emphasis was on stars and big concerts. There were few places to play, but that too has changed.
Kids started playing, whether it was in garages or in little tiny clubs, really holes. And it just got energetic and exciting again in a way that it hadn't in quite a few years. And to me, that was a reaffirmation of its original energy.
The original energy of rock and roll has always burst out of the underground. When the Beatles played the Cavern Club in 1962, their music was raw, and they themselves were called punks. The new generation of teenagers weren't even born when the Beatles broke in. They're encountering basic gut-level rock and roll for the first time. This concert with the Ramones may look like an extravaganza, but it's actually being held in the jammed basement of a third-rate New York hotel.
Well, Kings Road belongs to punk rockers. Kings Road belongs to punks!
An extreme element of new wave is what is called punk, a British phenomenon. Punk bands and their followers symbolize by their appearance the idle, frustrated, and hostile youth of the British working class. Punk bands took the vitality of American groups and added a blatantly political message. The punks didn't catch on in America, although bands like the Sex Pistols did make a mark. They were the most publicized because of Sid Vicious. Vicious was arrested in connection with the death of his girlfriend, and he died weeks after from a drug overdose. To many, punk symbolized violence, the dreadful possibility of riot which has always seemed to cling to rock and roll. Whether at a post-war concert by Bill Haley and the Comets, or the tragedy 2 weeks ago at a Who concert in Cincinnati. Even when the deaths and injuries were caused not by the music, but by the crush of fans trying to get into the concert hall. The punk movement has subsided, but the key remaining representative is the Clash.
Clash are certainly very important. Clash came along in the wake of the Sex Pistols. They were one of the original punk bands. The whole punk thing is more an attitude than anything else. But it's just a very straight-ahead, almost violent message. They're a tremendously vital, exciting live band.
To see the Clash is exciting, even crazy. They're singing, "We're a garage band." The garage is where there are no slick studio sounds, big money, record contracts, or publicity. They'll even die for the cause.
Americans have forgotten what rock and roll is about, and so that's what we're doing here. We're trying to remind them.
It ain't about playing the right chord for a start.
If punk ain't about playing the right chords, what is it? It's anger, energy, politics. In fact, many of the chords they do play are those of reggae, the syncopated third world liberation music, essentially from the Caribbean. Reggae is replacing punk as a dominant influence in British new wave music. New wave means loud rock and roll dance band like the Ramones. It means the angry punk politics of the Clash. And it also means a sort of intellectual art rock typified by the Talking Heads.
I think we get called intellectual or cerebral or whatever. Probably just because our words and the way we dress and whatnot is a little different than the rock stereotype.
I mean, I would hate to be thought that we didn't think about things, you know, but I think that our music is really meant to be felt as much as anything.
What is felt is more than a dance beat. Talking Heads are as deliberately provocative as other new wave groups. Their songs express what they think modern life is all about, absurdity and paranoia. This one's called Psycho Killer.
I can't seem to face up to the facts. Tense and nervous, and I can't relax. Can't sleep, bed's on fire. Don't touch me, I'm a real live liar. Psycho killer.
To the Talking Heads, the noise of the new wave is experimental music.
I think that noise has become being included in music ever since, you know, all in classical music, Beethoven might have been considered noise to Mozart. The fact that it's pop music is a great thing to stop it from becoming too much noise.
We are fainted, we are blind. I hate people when they're not polite. Psycho killer.
To the record industry, this noise is beginning to be big business.
Our job as a record company is to find the new talent and find the stars of tomorrow. And if this area of new wave music is a fertile field, we're going to record it and make it available to the public. And of course, this is where the stars of the 1980s are going to come from.
I wish people would only come see us at clubs and that we could just forget about trying to reach the most people. I think that records are pretty good.
Unfortunately,
but
that doesn't work because the record company just can't stand the idea of a band with all this critical acclaim and all that only playing in clubs where, my goodness, only 500 people can see you at a time. You should be on a tour, they say, where you know, you can get at least 2,000 people a hit.
And so the final component of new wave is commercial success. The artists are being absorbed into the very thing they rebelled against, the big-time record and film industry. Robert Stigwood, no slouch when it comes to betting on music trends, remember Saturday Night Fever, is making his next movie a new wave movie, Times Square. This scene is set to Talking Heads' Life During Wartime. What's next? It might not be Klaus Nomi singing a futurist opera. The language is his own invention, but you never know. One thing New Wave proves is that there's always something going on you don't know about, whether it's in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s.
Thank you, Tom. That may seem like pretty weird stuff, but I think we should remember those 21-year-old lyrics from Danny and the Juniors. I don't care what people say, rock and roll is here to stay.